Congratulations, Rupert.
Thank you.
And I want to ask you, first of all, when you decided to make the film, obviously it's a remake, is that a little bit daunting, especially trying to make something your own, with your own style?
You know, it's funny, I never, maybe my naivety was at play here, but I never really thought of it as a remake. So it's only until finishing the film and talking to people that I obviously remind myself now that we are technically a remake, but it was a reimagining in so many ways and a reinterpretation of what it means to be a gambler. That's what brought me into the story in the first place. And Bill Monahan's script, where he took the notion of gambling and attempted to take it out of the casinos and place it in the context of our lives and the choices that we make and the gambles that we take. And I think that's a very different journey to explore than the original film. Definitely,
yeah. And I wanted to ask you, as a director, what kind of preparation do you have to do just to get into the mindset of a gambler? Did you gamble yourself?
I did. I mean, Mark spent a bit more time in the casinos researching, but yeah, again, it's sort of that thing where I try to always relate it to the choices that we make in our lives. So the thing that drew me to the project in the first place was how interesting these relationships were. The relationship he has with his mother, the relationship he has with this young student in his class, and he's really taking gambles every step of the way in terms of how he relates to these people and how he sort of evolves through them. So that was the story that I was focused on. So I, of course, related it to more personal aspects in that respect.
Exactly, because he's not really an addict, per se.
Nope.
It's an interesting character study of Jim Bennett, and fascinating to watch. And I remember when I spoke to you in Toronto, I told you that my heart was racing for like 15 minutes after the film was over.
That's good.
Why is it so intense? Like, what is it about this, when you even saw the script in your, because kudos to you for, getting us there.
I think the pieces you're talking about, particularly those card-playing pieces or the win or lose of the roulette wheel, it's funny, when you watch gambling, to me, every time I watch gambling, I'm bored. I think, it's not a spectator sport in my view. So that said, the stakes are so immense, and so how do you get under the skin of the people playing and taking such huge bets? And that win or lose kind of mentality and what it means for them if they lose and what it means for them if they win. And I thought of it like a Western. So if you look at Once Upon a Time in the West and Sergio Leone and the way he shoots a gunfight, it's very rarely about the actual visceral violence. It's much more about the sense of anticipation and what's going on behind the eyes and how they look at each other and how they stand. And so I focused on the silences, I guess, and the sounds. And that was a lot of fun to design that.
Yeah, really great, really great. Let's talk a little bit about Mark Wahlberg, because boy, I honestly think this is one of his best performances in years, like really intense. And he put a lot into this. He lost a lot of weight. First I have to ask you, shooting monologues like that, is there a secret to that?
Learn your lines, I guess, which he did. I mean, he knew this script back to front, and that for me as a director is so magnificent, because to be able to step onto set with an actor so well prepared gives you the opportunity to shoot it like theater. So we can run a 7-page scene, in one, and we can then build the scene around him. We're not doing it line by line, which can happen with some actors where you're not only trying to actually tell the story of the scene, but you're trying to basically find a way through so that they don't fluff their lines all the time. So with Mark, it was quite the opposite. He came to this kind of like a racehorse. He was ready to go from the off. So it was magnificent to have somebody who was that immersed in the role and the film itself.
So what ultimately impressed you or surprised you about Mark Wahlberg?
I think his fearlessness. I mean, I learned as I went along. He's one of those, I think, people as much as being an actor, that he's very centered, he's very understated. His emotions, he's learned how to, I guess, see the world in quite a tempered way. But at the same time, underneath, you can see this sort of raging bull trying to get out or ready to get out. And I think it's interesting to me, like, some of his best performances have come from working with directors that clearly push him. If you think of David O. Russell, who I don't know personally, but from the movies I watch of his and knowing secondhand how he likes to work with actors and how he pushes them sometimes beyond breaking point, but he gets great performances, and I can see Mark relishes that. So it was interesting as I went along as a director to realize that I needed to really kind of poke him a lot, and he was really up for that.
Yeah. I want to talk about Brie Larson, because I thought she did an amazing job in this. And I remember seeing her, you know, in a bunch of other things, but Short Term 12 for me was just, whoa, like this
Yeah.
girl has some chops.
Yeah.
So what was it for you to cast her? Because, you know, she's really the only central woman. I mean, well, there's Jessica Lange, of course, but you really focus on Brie. Like, for some reason, you just can't take your eyes off that girl.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'll be really candid in the sense that you need a really good actress to play a role that's very small in this sense. And by that I mean, when you have a female role like this, I wanted to see more of that character. I wanted to understand more about what made her a genius. And unfortunately, sometimes with ensemble movies, that can get lost, where you, at the end of the day, we're obviously all serving the protagonist and his story, and she was certainly doing that. But we only really understand who she is through the eyes of Mark, and that makes a lot of sense in some respects, but also to create a fully evolved, fully arced character, it takes an extraordinary actress to take what on the page is quite small and try and expand it in the silences and the looks, and you know, less about dialogue, less about screen time, but more in just the really subtle moments. And she's one of those few actors that has this innate intelligence and understanding of how to play a scene that's very authentic, but also she's kind of like a sponge.
Yes.
You know, she pulls on all these different aspects that don't necessarily have to do with the character.
Yeah, and you know, when you have an actor like, you know, John Goodman delivering, especially the speech that he does, a pivotal speech, which is so phenomenal. Do you still, as a director, kind of, you know, sitting behind the camera, have your pinch myself moments?
I do, yeah. There was a moment in the second in this climactic scene with Frank, with John's character, where he's challenging Mark, and he's saying, if I lend you this money and you don't pay me back, and then he goes through the list of all the things that are going to happen to Mark and to Jim, rather, and he narrows his eyes, and a couple of people who've seen the film think we did a visual effect, because his pupils go inky black, and it's like he kind of turns into the devil for that brief moment. And there's no special effect there. It's all John. Somehow he can even change the color of his pupils, so he's sort of a magician to me.
He's phenomenal. So, okay, how are you going to top yourself? What's coming up next from you?
I think, I mean, having now done a character-driven film like this, which was really wonderful to be able to do as a filmmaker, and I love Hal Ashby and those filmmakers that have this great freewheeling sensibility, but I want to go back to more cause and effect storytelling and genre storytelling, so science fiction.
Oh, back to science fiction. Good. Well, you did great and everything. Honestly, congratulations on this. It's such a great film. And,
Thank you.